ladies and gentlemen, to our afternoon segment on historical figures. Today we have a few for you revolving around the topic of slavery. Some big names, some small. Starting off, we have the Moses of her people, Harriet Tubman.
Such a pleasure to be on this show.
It's a pleasure to have you. Why don't you start with some basics about yourself?
Yes, I would be glad to. So I was born a slave around the 1800s, and I didn't know my exact birth date, just like many others born into slavery too, and it wasn't something they kept track of at the time. And I was born in a farm in Maryland, and I worked as the house servant when I was young, and as I got older, I was put to work in the fields.
Interesting. I have a note here that says that you suffered from a traumatic brain injury. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah. It's actually a really interesting story. So one day, I witnessed a black man trying to purchase something at a white-owned general store, and the owner wouldn't let him buy anything, and so I tried to intervene. I might have been 13, but I knew I had to do something. And then I tried to get the owner to stop harassing the man and let him go, but the owner threw a 2-pound brick at my head.
Wait.
Yeah, and my mom did her best to try to nurse me back then, but I never fully recovered, so I was left with epilepsy and seizures for the rest of my life.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow. It's really a miracle, truly, that you survived.
Yeah.
So after you escaped slavery, you went back to lead others out of, those situations too. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I heard they were gonna sell me, so I didn't want that to happen either. So I left and I ran to Philadelphia, and shortly after, I knew I couldn't leave everyone else behind, and I had to at least try to help if I could. So I started leading them along the Underground Railroad. I helped find people who were willing to risk their lives to aid the slaves trying to escape, and it was about 70 people I helped bring to freedom. So
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, you're truly an inspiration.
I am, yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to say to our viewers before we wrap up your segment?
Guys, don't forget about the people in the places you used to be in. Just because you're free doesn't mean everyone else is. Love others and do what you can to help them.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Tubman. We appreciate you coming on the show. It's now time to segue to our next guest. He was a former slave who wrote about his travels. We have Frederick Douglass, interviewed by Jaffia.
Hello, I'm your host, Jaffia, and today we have a special guest with us. Hello, Frederick. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Is it okay if I go ahead and start and tell you about myself?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I was born in February of 1818. I don't know the exact day, but I like to celebrate on the 14th because I think it's a fun day. I was born a slave, and I got sent around to a couple different farms to work, but when I was 8, I got sent to the Hugh and Sophia Old farm at Fells Point.
Is that where you learned to read and write?
It is. My job was to take care of their son, and so while Sophia was teaching her son stuff, she took pity on me and decided to teach me to read and write too.
That's so kind of her.
It was. I loved learning, and it went really well until her husband found out, and that didn't go so well because it's illegal to teach slaves to read and write, and so I was banned from their son's lessons, but I did keep learning in secret.
Did you do anything with this new learning?
Not at first. I was kind of moved around from plantation to plantation, and so I didn't have time. But I did decide to start teaching the other slaves that I was around because I knew that I had such a powerful gift that I wanted to share it with them as well.
I know you escaped from slavery. Care to tell us how that happened?
Yeah, it wasn't until years later. I got arrested for an attempted escape, and they sent me back to Hugh and Sophia. I'm not sure why, but he decided to pay me to work in a shipyard instead of working as a slave, and so of course I took that opportunity, and I got to learn a new trade. But it was shortly after that I finally escaped. I got in trouble for attending a religious event that was against slavery, and so I ran away before I could get into more trouble. They say that I got too comfortable with my freedom, but I think that I was just exercising my basic rights.
That's right. Incredible. Is this where you started writing?
Well, I'd been writing, since I could, doing my best to just keep track of my life and my story. I knew that I wanted others to hear it, and so I traveled across the country with my wife and kids after I had escaped, because I wanted to talk to others about the importance of freedom and just why slavery was so wrong. And so I wrote 3 autobiographies and have continued to share what my life was like as a slave so that others can learn some empathy.
That's amazing. Is there anything else you would like to say to the audience before we move on?
That people's stories are important and it helps us connect to those who are similar to us and those who have the opportunity to learn something different, and that everyone deserves to be free, and sharing your story can make that happen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Douglas. Our next and final segment is the story of a young woman who stood up for the rights of slaves and women. Angelina Gribke.
Hello, Miss Angelina. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Your story isn't as commonly known as other abolitionists. What's your story?
Well, I was born into a family that believed in slavery. My father was one of the wealthiest slave owners in South Carolina. I grew up as a Christian, and I didn't know much when I was young, but I did know that slavery was wrong. As soon as I could, I moved to Philadelphia against my family's wishes to start advocating.
I'm sure that was a hard decision to make.
It definitely wasn't easy, but I knew what I believed in, and I wanted to do what I could to help those in need. Being a woman, I was always looked down upon. No one took me seriously or heard what I had to say, but I kept trying. I even wrote a 36-page essay on why slavery was wrong and women's rights, and they burned it.
Oh, that's horrible. It says you wrote a book with your husband.
I did. A young abolitionist. like
Guys.
Okay, he was a young abolitionist, like I, and we needed each other. We did write a book and spoke against the injustice of me.
We're almost out of time today, but is there anything else you want to say?
I believe that one day true judgment will come to those who deserve it. Stand up for what you believe in and encourage others to do the same.
Well, you have it here, folks. 3 incredible stories of truth and resilience. They all had their great reminders of helping those in need and fighting for the people around you. Thanks.